All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Lions Guy Podcast. Today, we've got Mr. Chris Norris, who I got connected with via JT Frank, who was a former podcast episode, is a podcast host also with The Consequence of Habit. So go back and check out that Lions Guide episode and check JT out. But Chris is retiring as we speak. He's retiring from the Navy after 24 years. But you know what Chris and I got connected about was like all his insights in wellness, meditation, breath work. He's an ultra runner. He's overcome alcohol use and things like that. So I think, a lot of knowledge and insight. So Chris, welcome to the show.
Yeah. Hey, thanks a lot, man. Thanks for having me here. I really appreciate you having me on. So I am Chris Norris, and tell you a little bit about myself. I'm originally from upstate New York, Albany. I haven't lived there in about 24 years, as Dale said. I'm transitioning out of the U.S. Navy as we speak. I'm literally in Bangor, Washington, on a sub base, trying to get the paperwork right so I can get out. But so I'm the youngest of 9 kids. I have 5 sisters and 3 brothers. That's pretty crazy when I say
What's
it.
the age range on that? Like, are you in the middle?
No, I am the youngest of 9 kids. So imagine growing up with 5 sisters, 3 brothers, come from a working class family. My dad and mom, when I came around, they had owned a corner store, gas station, convenience store close to Albany International Airport. And it was open 24/7, 365. They only closed for about 6 hours on Christmas. It was a lot of hard work. It was quite the ordeal.
So instead of family farm, you guys had a family gas store.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's awesome.
I grew up in Albany, New York, and I joined the Navy in 1997 on a losing streak, and turned my life around. Even though I had some hiccups along the way, as Dale had talked about, I had some experience with alcohol use disorder, as we would call it in the DSM. And so talk a little bit about that.
So how'd you end up in the Navy, Chris?
So it's so on Christmas Eve of 1994, I woke up in a dingy, dark, nasty apartment in Albany, New York, and it was not my apartment. It was like a college flop house. Right?
You were how old?
I was in 1994. I was 20 years old.
Okay.
So yeah. And on the phone, on the cordless phone, not the cell phone, was my mom. So somehow or another, she got this number to this place, and it was my mom. And when I picked up the phone, on the other end, my mom had told me that my nephew had died. So my nephew, again, large family. So I was actually born an uncle to my nephew. And my nephew had passed away driving from Syracuse to Albany, New York, with his fiance, who was also killed in a car accident. So how that gets me into the Navy is coming after that phone call. I had driven back to my mom's house, and along the way, like, this little spark was lit in me that would basically that here my nephew, who was doing everything right in life, he had passed away, and I was doing everything wrong. And really just being a detriment to society. And here I still was wasting my potential, wasting my life. So I lit like a small spark in me. And it took about 3 more years of desperation and arrest and a couple of rehabs. And then I finally got desperate enough to join the Navy.
Wow.
Yeah. And when I joined the Navy, I remember I made a commitment of like, hey, I'm going to give this thing like everything I've got. I'm going to work as hard as I can at this, because I had never given anything I got to anything like in my whole life, other than, maybe like trying to get some beer and some cigarettes. And I worked pretty hard at that. So when I did that, and I came in the Navy, I excelled. And I was at the time pleasantly surprised that, wow, that in the Navy, there's a lot of drinking and a lot of mayhem to be had. So I fit right in.
You got the best of both worlds. You got to get on and cause mayhem at the same time.
Right. So I was under the impression that it was going to be like this starchy, like uptight organization. And when I joined, and like the first place I went after my technical school was Puerto Rico. And when I showed up there to the barracks in Puerto Rico, it was just a madhouse. And yeah, I was calling back home to my boys and saying, "Hey man, like you gotta join the Navy. Like this is good stuff." But yeah, so I went to when I joined the Navy, I was actually sober, and I would say dry. I wouldn't really say I was sober. If I was sober, it would be like stark raving sober. But I was dry for about 8 months, and then when I at the end of my technical school, I decided like, hey, I'm doing well. I'm in California. I got a tan. I'm in shape. I've got a job now, and I'm legit. So I could probably go out and have just a couple drinks, which is like a complete lie, that I would tell myself, because I had never in my life had just a couple drinks. Anytime I drank, it was full throttle, and it was like, a couple drinks would lead to about 20 drinks, because it just, it brings about the phenomenon of craving in me, and I just can't stop until I'm obliterated. So anyway, from that, but after I went out and I got loaded, and then, the same things happened, which was, blackout drinking and embarrassment and things of that nature. But I didn't stop. I kept going. So I kept going for another 10 years. And, even though I was drinking hard and partying hard, and to the point that it got to like real, like severe alcohol use disorder, like, drinking by myself in an empty house, with the blinds closed and the door locked and the lights off. I was still doing well in my career. I mean, I still got picked up with Naval Special Warfare. I was traveling the world and doing fun things and doing important things, but I just could not get the monkey of drinking off my back, until 2007. So 2007 incident happened, and I was arrested again for something I did intoxicated, and that was about the lowest point of my life. That's when I was really, I took everything I had built up, and I was continually building things up and tearing it down, building it up,
Sure.
tearing it down. But that was the last time that I really tore it all down. And my wife, I point over because she's sleeping at 2 beds down from me here in this hotel room I'm in. She was on her way from Thailand to New York, flying in, and we were going to get married and start this new life. And I'm sitting in jail in Maryland.
Ugh.
Just tore down my career, 10 years worth of hard work. And I'm convinced that my life is over. And I'm thinking that, like, I can't wait to get out of jail, because I'm going to kill myself when I do. I just can't take it anymore. So
what, so let's jump into that. So what is then, alcohol use disorder? Like, cause when you sent me your info over, I noticed you put it that way, and I don't know that I've heard it. I've heard alcohol abuse, and there's the joke, right? Like, like about alcohol abuse. Don't be like, when people spill it, they're like, "Oh, that's alcohol."
Right.
So I've heard alcohol abuse, but alcohol use disorder. What is that?
Yes, I'd say that's a kind of what the medical terminology is. So from the DSM, which is Diagnostic Statistics Manual of Mental Health Disorders, from I don't know the year. I should know it, but I don't. It used to be called alcohol abuse, and then it was separated between alcohol abuse and alcohol dependence. And then when the DSM-5, so that's from the DSM-4 called, when the DSM-5 came out, the 5th edition forward, they started referring to it as alcohol use disorder with 3 severity levels: mild, moderate, and severe. And I was definitely a severe.
So what's the kind of difference between? Do you know the difference between the those categories there, those severities?
Yeah, it's just it's a matter of, there's like 13 categories or something like that, or 13 questions they basically ask. So if you answer 1, 2, or 3, I think up to 3, it'd probably be mild. From 3 to 6 would be moderate, and then 6 and above, or something like that. And
right.
That may not be exactly accurate, but it's something of that nature.
Right.
And I would say I hit every wicket. I'm an overachiever in every.
Right. You took the words out of my mouth. You're like swinging for the fences. Oh, there's 13. I got the hold my beer. I got those 13.
Right.
Pardon the
Yeah,
pun. But
no worries.
so all jokes aside, right? Like, so what was influencing your alcohol drinking? Was it just, was it in your
Yeah.
family, like growing up,
hmm
or,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great
what was it?
question.
What's the influence?
Yeah, it's like, so where does it spring from? And I'm grateful, to say that, like, hey, I can't like trace it back to some massive trauma or something. I wasn't abused as a child. I had a pretty good upbringing, but so there's definitely some of that gene though in my family. Like my mom has it, my dad has it, my uncle had it, my sister has it, so on and so forth. So there's definitely that. And then it's just, the influence of being the youngest son. And then, my brother's 4 years older than me, and I hung out with a lot of his friends, and they were running and gunning, and, doing their thing. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I took to it like a fish to water. The first time I ever got drunk, I remember I was 11 years old,
Hmm.
and I got hammered. And I remember, and I probably had alcohol poisoning at that age, and that, my body makeup. And I remember thinking, as bad as it was, the next day, like I was like, I knew I was going to do it again. Like I knew, I was like, man, that was, it had, because there was a point somewhere in there in time where like all the stars aligned and everything was right in the world, for me, during that intoxicated period. So, um, it is important though. I think it brings up an important topic of, like, it's more than just stopping drinking. When I sobered up and got into recovery, there's a lot of intrinsic work that needed to be done. And I went to therapy and rehabs and the whole nine. So yeah, but there's nothing I can pinpoint on. I can't say, well, it's because of this trauma or this one thing. So
Right.
I'm a big fan of like a multi-causational model of what causes addiction. I don't think you can trace back to just say one thing. There's
Right.
many, many different factors, and it can be something different for everybody.
So what were the big
Yeah.
impacts? Like what was happening to you as a result? Right now it's hindsight looking
Oh,
back, you're going to have to tell the Baltimore story or Maryland, wherever you were.
yeah.
But what was happening? Like what was, you said you were still it sounds like you're still telling the line as far as your job was concerned, but what were
hmm
the, mental, physical, emotional relationship impacts that you were kind of up
Well, yeah. I
against?
mean, yeah. So physically, I was 25 pounds heavier than I am right now.
Right.
And I was totally out of shape, and I'm sure my liver was damaged, being damaged. Um, but mentally too, it was and it was so rough. It would be like I had massive anxiety, and I would be dealing with that a lot, and then the alcohol was like, a crutch for that, and then but it would cause more. So it's like, I mean, when you're drinking to handle anxiety, or you're drinking to handle depression, like it's like, hey, let me try to put this fire out, and what do I have to work with? Oh, I got some gasoline, let me throw that on there. Oh, that's not working. So it's like
Well,
um
it's like
so mhm.
it's a fake, right? It's not really working. You think it's working, right? Or at least it dulls the
Yeah,
pain temporarily because you don't have a better option, right? You haven't
right.
found what else can dull the pain, so you just go back to that because you don't have any other choice, kind of, so to speak.
Right. So as I would say, it's like a temporary solution that causes long-term problems,
Sure, yeah,
rather
that's a
than
good way to
like,
put it.
rather than the opposite is true now with recovery, where it's short-term struggles for a long-term benefit. Because it's not always easy to stay sober. There's going to be challenges there for sure. When you're working in the you know workforce, and there's going to be social engagements and things of that nature that you're going to have to attend if you want to be within the organization. And there's going to be drinking, and you have to deal with, like, hey, how do I make it through that without drinking, and things like that. Those are the struggles. And also, like, just the struggles of wellness altogether is like, working out is a struggle, and what is it doing? Well, it's making me stronger. So, but yeah, so back to like how I was suffering. I mean, it got bad, man. It got to the point where like I was literally locking myself in my house every night and drinking to oblivion. And then there would be, I mean, I was holding together at work, kinda, but there was also like, an incident would pop up every now and again where I would get loaded and do something or say something stupid,
While you were
and
loaded, or as a result of being hungover the next day, or
um,
both?
while both really while I was loaded, and then you could really, some of the times you couldn't even call it hungover for the next, the next day. You would say, just not as intoxicated as he was last night, but he's still intoxicated today. And it was, yeah, it was getting really bad. And then it would, but at the same time, so back to that, like, hey, I worked my freaking ass off. A lot of that is enabling, where folks will say, hey, yeah, he gets loaded, but a lot of folks drink in that community. A lot of folks drink in the military, and they drink to excess. It's it's pretty accepted. So it's like people would cover up. I mean, I probably could have been in rehab in 1998 for things I did on like my first and second deployments in the Navy, but I didn't, because my chain of command was like, this guy works his ass off. Let's sweep this under the rug and allow him to continue to work. And I don't blame I don't blame anyone for how far down the hole I went, but it was even to the point, like when I really, in 2007, and we'll get into the story in Maryland, what happened was I was doing a week of training and testing with Naval Special Warfare on some maritime mobility platforms, and at the end of that week, we had a little picnic, a little barbecue, and everyone has 3 beers, and they're like, "Oh, it was a great time. Let's," they're going to bed, and I have 3 beers. It makes me want to have 30 more, and now I have the keys to a vehicle, and I'm like, I'm going out. So I took a government vehicle out in town and got loaded. So
Where
when I
were
got
you?
pulled
DC
over,
or?
no, I was in Patuxent River, Maryland, Pax
Okay.
River.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I got, yeah, so I got pulled over like 2 o'clock in the morning, driving a government vehicle, and flew 3 times the legal limit.
Jeez.
That's my, yeah. So that's my story. And I'm grateful for that, like I tell like people, like, that's best case scenario, man. What happened for me? It really saved my life. And it probably saved a lot of other people's lives, could have been a heck of a lot worse, as I like to remind myself, is like, I could have been waking up in jail from a blackout and with a lawyer telling me that we think we can get you manslaughter. That's
Sure.
I guess where I was headed. I was headed as I think I told you, as a conversation we had before, was like, drinking for me is like, it's going to end up in one of 3 places. Either I'm going to the morgue, I'm going to the mental hospital, or I'm going to prison. That's what it is. So it's like, if I belly up to a bar tonight, I'm not just putting like $20 on the bar. I'm putting everything. I'm putting my entire life, everything I have today is going on the bar. And grateful I don't intend to do that.
So the Pax River incident, that was your tipping point to
Yeah.
so what happened? Like, what, as far as, what was the tipping point for you, right? So because I think it's interesting, right? You talked about your one tipping point with
Mm-hmm.
your nephew passing, and you kind of saying, hey, well, I'm wasting my life, and he just lost his, and he was doing everything right. Similarly, what was this one like for you?
Well, there's a lot of like, false starts where I would like go out and have a bad incident, and I'd be like, that's it, I'm never drinking again, and then I'd be saying that shit at like 10 o'clock in the morning, and then by 4 o'clock that afternoon, I would forget about it and start again. So there's a lot of these little tipping points throughout my drinking career. But how this one was different was, it's like, I finally, things were like coming together, and I built it up and built it up and built it up. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, I tore it back down again. And that was like, I wasn't sure, honestly. I mean, I honestly wasn't even sure at the time when I said, like, this is it, like, I'm done, whether or not it was really going to stick, you know? And it's like, I mean, I guess, it's a pretty good indicator of how serious I was about staying sober, was when I started telling people that I was staying sober. When I started talking about it to people
Yeah.
that were close to me in my circle, because if I hadn't, then I was like, hey, I don't want to tell anyone I'm sobering up, because, crying out loud, with the day I want to drink, I don't want them giving me a hard time. Well, why are you drinking? I thought you said you're sobering up.
Well,
So,
hey, that just I just read that. I just finished a book called The One Thing, and it calls that out. It cites some research that says, hey, you're 44% more probable to accomplish your goal if you write it down, but you're like 77% more probable to accomplish your goal if you write it down and you go tell the people in your circle, And so
right.
I think that's interesting that you call that out, right? You're a case study in that kind of, that research at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. So, I mean, but it's like the tipping point is also different for everybody. And I don't like it. There's that saying that goes around like, oh, you have to hit rock bottom. It's like, well, it doesn't have to get that bad. You don't have to, you don't have to bring it all the way down.
Hey
You don't
man,
have
you
to
think you ought
burn.
to stop drinking? No, man,
Oh
I got
man.
more digging to do. I can dig this hole deeper.
Right. I'm waiting
Hold
till
my
I burn the
beer.
fucking house down. It's like, no, like you
Jeez.
can stop. So it's like, um, it's just hard to do though, because I mean, even as miserable as it is, like there's familiarity in it. It's like there's familiarity in that lifestyle. There's familiarity and knowing that, oh, I mean, oh, there's more misery coming, but I was more scared of like, I didn't know, sobriety scared the crap out of me. When I sobered up and got into recovery, I had literally been, drinking and either intoxicated in withdrawal, for 2 decades. So when I sobered up, I literally was like Ricky Bobby, like Talladega Nights. Like, I don't know what to do with my hands, man. Like, I don't know how to live sober. I had no idea. I had to completely relearn life. And
And
it
with
was,
regard to
mhm,
the recovery process, the quick question I have for you is like, did you go through the withdrawals and all that? Like, because I've
mhm,
heard, and I don't know a lot about this, but I've heard, and maybe you do, the medical implications of drinking so much and then not
mhm,
drinking. What
mhm.
was the process of recovery for you in that regard?
Yes. Yeah. So I went through regular withdrawals of like, shaking where it's like delirium tremens and stuff like that. But if you've been drinking like, excessively and your alcohol use disorder severe for an extended period of time, yeah, the withdrawals of alcohol can literally kill the person. So that's why a lot of times it's suggested that you have a medically supervised
Mm.
detoxification from alcohol, because you can get into seizures and delirium tremens and hallucinations and so on and so forth. So, and I went to a rehab through the Navy. And then at the end of that rehab, I got big into a 12-step program, 12-step fellowship. I credit that with saving my life. And I attacked that like with the fever that I attacked everything. It was like I went full bore. I was going to at least a meeting a day and 2, 3 meetings on the weekends. And I had a sponsor that worked with me, and I went through all the steps and all that. And yeah, I was in there. I had to. I mean, I had
What
to.
were what were the key attributes of the 12-step program that kind of, why was that what saved
Mhm.
your life? What were the aspects that you think are key to your recovery?
Yeah, I think that it's the one of the biggest things it does is it gives you a fellowship of people that understand what you're going through, and that truly care about you and want to see you succeed. I mean, during that time, it was a troubled time in my life. It was bad. I was at a super low point, and all these people that I called my friends, it turned out that they were really just my drinking buddies. Because once I wasn't drinking anymore, they stopped calling, and once it was like, oh, he's in trouble and he's got some shit going on, it was like I had some communicable disease, and nobody wanted to be in the room with me anymore. And the people that were calling and checking in on me and saying how I was doing were people that's the most part I didn't even know. There were strangers I met in a room of people in recovery from an alcohol use disorder. Um, so the biggest thing it gave me was fellowship, and it gave me some purpose. It gave me something to do. There was tons. I was in Virginia Beach at the time. There was tons of these meetings. That were happening day and night, and it gave me that. And then the 12 steps gave me a breaking down of my ego and showing me how powerless I was over alcohol, and then introducing me to some higher power or whatever that may be. And then giving me say, hey, how about you take some direction and take some cues from the program, and do an inventory of my life, which was huge. But I think one of the biggest steps that like it brings is there's a point. It's the fifth step within the 12 steps, and it's that you admit your faults to God, to another person, and completely. So that was like one of the big things. It's like a confession. And I sat down and like I went over my whole life, like my deepest, darkest secrets, and it's really a very vulnerable time. And I went over this stuff, and I told another person um, some of the things, as I call them, like the ones that, like the stuff that I was like, man, I'm never telling anyone about this. The stuff that is really bad. The stuff like when I was doing it, I was like, don't ever tell anyone about this. And I told someone that stuff. And when I did, I remember I would tell him a little, and then I would look at him. I'd look at him in the eyes and be like, all right, he's still here. He hasn't run out of the room yet. And I'll tell him a little more, and all right, he's still here. And then at the end of this session, which was like 4 hours, this guy stood up and he hugged me and he told me he loved me and he told me everything was all right. And he was still my friend, and I was like, man, I was just like weight just coming off of me, and it's like, that's the thing, and as I talk about vulnerability today, it's one of those things where I don't know, I'd say 15 years ago, I never would have got on a podcast like this and told you any of this stuff, because I was ashamed, but today I can talk openly about it and I can be vulnerable about it because I know that it's connecting you and I a little deeper. It's connecting the listeners and I a little deeper. And it's a win-win because it's making me more comfortable in my skin, because I can tell you these things and you can relate to the humanness of it. And, I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm all right today. So.
Well, you said it great earlier. Like, what did you say? The short-term pain for the long-term gain, right? Like, I think this is that, right? Like, it's a part.
Yeah,
it's an example of that, right? You're going through the pain of coming clean, but the long-term benefit is the freedom of it. The freedom of the vulnerability, kind of putting it out there or getting it, unburdening yourself a little bit. So I think it's awesome.
For sure. Yeah, it's exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's those short-term struggles for the long-term benefits, which is the exact opposite the way I lived my life before. And so it's like, and that goes into like a lot of different things I do. Now I lean into discomfort. I'm not scared. Sometimes I chase it. I don't. I got to be careful. I'm not getting into it in like some weird like addictive way. With like ultra running or things like that. But yeah, I lean into it.
The when you mentioned the powerlessness against alcohol, I hadn't heard that before. What do you mean by that? Like, you learned that you were powerless against alcohol?
Basically, it means that if left to my own devices, I'll drink again. So, and especially like once if I can keep it out of my body, like I'm okay. But the second if it gets into my system, like it gets its hooks into me, and I won't be able to resist that. We call it the phenomenon of craving, which is like, I don't have a lot of craving for alcohol. It's really all mental. But once I get it in my body, it's an actual physical thing where it feels like I'm hungry, but it ain't I'm not hungry for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich,
Yeah.
Like I know there's only one thing that's gonna suffice. And
is that typical of all addictions? Do you know, like, because I talk about sugar like that. Like, I've noticed, and it's because back to your weight, you're losing 25 pounds. Number one, I'll throw this out there again. I say this all the time. You want to lose weight? Cut out alcohol and sugar. Watch what happens.
Right.
If you do nothing else, cut it. If you want the easiest way to start losing weight, cut out alcohol and sugar. Watch what happens. But the phenomenon I'm craving, like I'll have that with sugar. So I've definitely worked of getting sugar out of my system and conscious of that. But I'll eat a full meal and my body will be like, nah, man, I know you just stuffed down 2,000 calories, but you're still hungry. You're still hungry. Look at that little pantry with all your kids' little junk snacks in there. Like, you won't go look in there real quick, see what you got. But I know that like I've had to build this awareness, right? To go, no, you're not hungry. That's that little sugar addiction kind of going, hey, no, we're not done eating yet. You go look in that pantry, buddy.
Yeah, really. Yeah, you're not alone, man. I'm the same in the same exact way. And then again, if it's one piece of candy, is a phenomenon.
It's curtains.
And it's like, curtains. Forget it. You must take the whole bag to bed with you.
And look, you were talking about this earlier, but when I was running hard a lot and training, that was my excuse, because we talked about like, doing great. And then, so, hey, I do awesome. So I can smash a box or two of Little Debbie's. Like, I just burned 2,000 calories on a run. So,
Right.
what the hell?
Yeah.
But man, so is that back to the phenomenon of craving and this hunger is do your knowledge, or maybe through the stuff you've learned through all this, is that typical of all addictions? Like, you kind of, that hunger is
I,
what it is.
yeah, I think I think like every substance is going to affect the user a little bit differently, but yeah, I mean, I think they share a lot of more commonalities than they do
Yeah.
differences. And I think a lot of it too, like we were talking about, like, hey, well, what causes this? Well, a lot, I mean, a lot of stuff can be traced back to trauma. And a lot of it is like, it's just like, it's almost like, it's like having a hole in your soul, and it's like you're filling it, and people fill it with different things. You might be filling it with shopping, sex, work, all these different things, just to, like, as I would say, like, anything that get me outside of myself, I could do to excess, and I could do to detriment, because, like, if I didn't work some type of program of healing and recovery, and I just went abstinent from alcohol, my experience was that my addiction became a shapeshifter, and I would just pick up something else,
Yeah.
And at the time, even though they're like healthier habits, I mean, I could run myself into the ground with exercise, over exercise, or I could get into, as I did, like I got a motorcycle in early sobriety because, like, one of the suggestions was, like, I didn't know what to do with myself. So it was like, well, why don't you get back into the things you gave up for alcohol? I was like, wow, that's a great idea. I was like, well, one of the first things I could think of is, like, I remember I sold my motorcycle because, I needed money for, partying, and I sold my motorcycle. And I was like, I'm going to buy a motorcycle. So I bought a motorcycle, but I couldn't just ride a motorcycle like a normal human being. I put 60,000 miles on that motorcycle. And then it was like, I got into, there was this GPS treasure hunting game called geocaching. And I couldn't just go out and find 5 geocaches. No, I found 1,500 geocaches. Like, it was just like everything was in excess. Like, anything I did was like, I used to joke and say, like, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing, And so,
well, dude, what stuck with me on this very topic, Joe Rogan said on his podcast once, because he would talk about people would say they're addicted to weed or weed's addictive. And his response to that was, if someone's addicted to weed, it's just because weed got there first. Meaning, if it were sex or alcohol or gambling or whatever, if someone, it's really the personality disorder of getting addicted to X, and that was his thing. And I think that's a little bit of what you're saying here. Like, you got an addictive personality, where you get, I don't know, I'll use the medical term OCD. I don't know, I'm medically trying to describe it that way, but you get obsessed with this one thing or the fulfillment of that one thing or that activity, and that's it. Like, you latch onto it and stay on. And at one point it's alcohol, and then you like start to replace it with other things. So.
And I think it's also a lot of it too is like getting new things, like getting new habits. There's like that you get addicted to, like, that honeymoon phase of a new thing. And then it's like, here's my new thing. And then you get, like, I bring that to excess. And I'm like, okay, screw that. I'm done, bored with that. What's the next new thing,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and as I've said in the past, is like, if I don't heal the underlying conditions of whatever's going on, and really embrace a completely different lifestyle, it's like, then I'll just, like I said, it's a shapeshifter. I'll just pick something else up. I'll just do something else. And it might look like, oh, wow, Chris is like super motivated and dedicated to exercise. It's like, no, Chris has a exercise use disorder now, coupled with an eating disorder, and he's also a workaholic. If you need him, call him on his office phone. He'll be there. So yeah.
I was going to ask then, is I wrote this question down in preparing for this episode, and is there a balance to be had with drinking versus not drinking? Or, and I know the easy answer is, hey, it depends on the person, but what are your thoughts on that? As far as any kind of balance of just having two versus going stage 10 nuclear?
Yeah, I know for me personally, again, yeah, you're right. The easy answer says, for me it's this way, and for others it might be. And I know I like, for me, it's like, I may have been a cucumber at one time in my life, but I'm a pickle now, and I'll never be able to go back to being a cucumber again.
Oh, I love that.
So it's like, I have I have the alcohol use disorder. So even though I haven't had a drink in over 14 years, because that incident in Maryland was, March 31st, 2007, man, that's it. Like I haven't had a drop of alcohol since. And I don't intend to test the theory to see whether or not I could have another drop of alcohol, because I think that the phenomenon of craving would come right back. And then everything I've built up here, which is, a successful career in the Navy, married to that girl that I didn't know who was going to pick her up in New York, from Thailand. And for over 14 years, I got an 8-year-old daughter, and I got a 6-month-old baby sleeping here, and we're ready for our next chapter of life. And
Yeah.
that next chapter does not involve alcohol. Like I'm a completely different person than I was, when I was drinking. Yeah.
When I talk to guys about this, and like I talked about, and I'll say this for the audience to hear, right? Like this isn't an anti-alcohol podcast. This is a growth podcast, right? And I find more and more each week, people are coming to this realization. That's why I don't, it comes up a lot, and this is why it comes up a lot, right? It's not this isn't a like say anti-alcohol campaign, or am I against people that drink? No, it's never that. But on the topic of growth, people hit this realization point where it's not serving, and they start to balance or start to analyze what its impact value is as compared to those things that can and should be important to them, right? And kind of weigh in like, hey, look at what this is stealing from the good in my life, right? Whether it's your relationships or your ability to do your job better or find your other passions or whatever. And I don't know, I'm proud to say like a lot of people have come to me after the podcast, since I've been doing the podcast, kind of talking about that. And that's why I do enjoy talking about this, because I think a lot of people have these doubts, like what I've gone through, you've gone through, like, trying to keep up with your drinking buddies, or, trying to avoid the pissing party when you say you're not drinking, right? Like, oh man, you're not drinking. What's wrong with you? And that's all, again, that's all about them. Like, cause they're thinking like, well, what are you saying about me if you're not going to drink? And it's not about you. It's about me. Is my response. Like, so don't take it personal.
Right.
So it's something that, people I think hit this point where they go, man, this is just one thing that's not serving me.
Right.
And I'm with you. Like, I think I've got everything you describe. I think you and I are two peas in a pod with regard to like, if I get my latches on something, it's curtains. Like I'm going to go, and so I was talking to my buddy JT, cause like, I got to focus on one thing at a time, because if I have multiple things going on, like I'm going to go ham on all three of those things at the same time. And, I'm going to drive myself crazy. So I'm with you with regard to the drinking. Like I'm not going back. I almost said I don't think I'm going back, but I'm not going back because of that. I think like once I tip it, I kind of just started, and I was never like raging alcoholic or anything like that, but I just know the impacts are not serving to my current mission, like who I want to be for my kids, like what I want to get done with myself, my life, my family, whatever. So it's not worth it. Like it's literally not worth the test. Like I think you said, like it's not worth testing it. What am I trying to prove? Like, hey, I can get away with it, like
Yeah, and then I'll go down this road of denial where I was like, wow, it wasn't that bad. Maybe next time will be better. or what my mind does, it'll latch on and be like, well, remember that one time in like 2003 where you did have 3 beers and you didn't get obliterated. See, you're not an alcoholic.
Right.
So
yeah, and I think what's been a benefit to that journey for me is like the availability of non-alcoholic stuff that actually tastes pretty good. And I don't know if you're drinking any NA stuff, but I do now. That has helped kind of give me something else to do. Like socially, when I'm out at events, it's nice. I enjoy, because I just drink coffee and water all day,
right.
So standing there at a social gathering, drinking water, or I don't drink coffee after 3, yeah, I need something different, and
right.
so I've this, year, I guess, of not drinking has been, my saving grace has been the non-alcoholic availability. Like Heineken's really
Yeah.
good. I this weekend I had at the Maryland Renaissance Festival, I had this dogfish, like I think it's Lemon Fest or something. That was
Oh,
really
cool.
good. Sorry, Budweiser, yours tastes like trash. Course doesn't taste
There
so
goes that
bad.
sponsorship.
Sorry, damn, the dude just hung up. He was dialing into my voicemail. No, but Heineken Zero is good. The dogfish one was pretty good. So right, it's not alcohol, right? It's a beer. It's something to drink, and they're
Hmm.
kind of low calorie and stuff like that too. As a result,
Yeah.
they're not bad.
Yeah.
So that's really helped me
I've heard
to
there's some good ones out there. I've heard like Athletic Brewing has some really good ones, but I haven't
yeah.
tried any of it. Again, I don't know. I'm a little nervous, man. I'm a little nervous about trying that because I think I'm probably at a different level of alcohol use disorder than yourself that you may have had
Well,
experience
yeah. I
with,
mean, as far as
or
what you described, yeah, I wasn't.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
a
right.
H10 nuclear.
Yeah. No, it wasn't amateur hour where I come from, man. I was pro at it. Whenever. I mean, one of the good indicators of it was like, I mean, one time I called my drinking a career, my drinking career. Like that's like, who the hell says that? So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it may not be the best idea for me, but it might work for someone else. And I'm all about it, man. Whatever works for individuals, have at it. I just know for me, it may not. I don't think it would work out too good.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you even kind of talking about it in that regard because it helps affirm kind of my position on it and kind of helps remove some doubt on that position of, yeah, could I just have a beer? Could I,
Hmm.
I'd say probably at the Renaissance Festival this weekend, like full disclosure, like I was in line to probably have a beer, because I was like, man, every year I love coming to this thing. It's
Hmm.
so nice outside, walk around, have a beer. And I
Right.
was in line with my stepdad, my mom, and they're drinkers and they do it casually and all good, no nothing crazy there or whatever, but they enjoy to
Yeah.
have a beer. And I was in line with them like, yeah, okay. And then he looks up and on the rack he said, man, dogfish, look, there's a non-alcoholic right there. I was like, and there was a part of me who's like, thank God, like,
Right. Right.
thank
Yeah.
God, get me that, and I
That's
was good
cool.
because I was trying to put something in my hand that wasn't
Hmm.
water. And
Hmm. Hmm.
and like I say, I appreciate you kind of telling your tale of like not even
Yeah.
dabbling. It's kind of like playing with a firecracker. Like, well, let me light this and see how long I can hold it, and if I can get rid of it
So it
before
blows
it
my
blows my
fingers off.
fingers off. Why
Yeah, man,
do
it's just not
that?
worth it. This
Yeah,
is not worth
exactly.
it.
Why are you playing that game? Like you really, So I guess
And, yeah,
that's
and
where
when it
I'm
comes
at.
to
So
events like that, man, like I would be like if I went to that, especially in early sobriety, like I'd be prepared to like just cut loose and I'm out of here, man. I don't care, and like I'm ready to save. I'm like I would save my ass, before I worried about saving my face. But it
yeah,
was my experience too. Is like at events like that, like nobody cares what I'm drinking, and if they do care, like if anyone's giving me a hard time about why aren't you drinking, that's a pretty good indicator they probably have a problem with alcohol as well. So,
yeah.
yeah, because that
You
again,
know,
back to my experience, like that was me. Like if I was at an event and you were with the event with me and you weren't drinking, I'd be like, what the hell? Like what is wrong with you? Like I didn't trust people that didn't drink.
well, it's odd, right? Like when you're a
Yeah.
drinker, you kind of go, well, what's up with this dude? What's
Right. Right.
what's going on?
Right.
Yeah, no, I feel, yeah, I think you're
Yeah.
spot on with something there. But I think you're right, and that's a part of like maturing, out of it, is realizing like, well, hey, so
Mm.
that is drinking, getting over it, man. But
Yeah.
no, like I say, I think it's awesome. So what have you filled the hole with at this point? I know in your
Yes.
bio we talked that you've got a ton of stuff with meditation, ultra running,
Hmm.
breath work. Like what
Yeah.
what what focus areas are important to you now?
Yeah. So what keeps me going and grounded and in wellness is, yeah, I've gotten into meditation. I've been a daily meditator for about 6 years now, and also got into exercise. And yeah, so I started around the same time, actually. Now I think about it, I started meditating and running long distances right around the same time. And then also, I mean, I got my career back. I recovered from that hiccup in my career, and
Did you get knocked down in rank on
oh
all
yeah,
that?
yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
I got to make E5 twice, and I made E6 twice, and man, you think
so
making
they
E6?
broke you down to what? Like, what were you in
Yeah,
2007?
so I was a senior E6 or a senior first class petty officer getting ready to take the chief petty officer exam, and then I went from that to week one, day one E5, like where
Ooh,
I was. So it took me 3 years in the Navy to make E5, right? And then at year 10, I went all the way back to where I was at year three,
right.
and yeah, so and with that, back to like my work ethic, I was like, I'm going to work my tail off regardless, regardless of anything. I'm just going to work my ass off until the last day in the Navy because I was pretty sure that I was going to get booted out on a thing that's called higher tenure, which you can only stay for so long at a certain rank. And I was approaching that now, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, holy crap, I had such a great career, and now approaching higher tenure. But yeah,
Yeah, I guess
so
you're hitting higher tenure as an E5, right? Because your time in
yeah,
service at
right,
E5. Yeah, okay.
right,
Yeah, I didn't even think about
yeah.
that.
Yeah, so I was I was about to get kicked out higher tenure, and then I made E6 the second time. And as I joke, I'm like, man, you think it's good to make E6 the first time? It's even better the second time. But I don't recommend it. Yeah, and then I continued to work my tail off, and with that hiccup in my career, I was like, well, I'll never be selected for chief petty officer, but it happened, and it happened like I didn't even intend for it to happen. Like I was just like, I just work my tail off because that's what I do. That's who I am. That's part of my personality. Is I learned that work ethic from my parents, and I just bust my hump, man. That's probably
And what do you
one of
think
my qualities.
contributed to what do you think contributed to, that, you hey, I'm not going to pick up E6. I'm not going to get selected for E6 because of what happened.
Hmm.
Why do you think you got, you know, why do you think you end up getting E6 despite that?
Well, I think so. I think there was definitely some influence from the senior leadership there, where they're like, "Hey, this guy's learned his lesson. He's doing the right thing. And he's busted his hump." And they could tell, like, I took full responsibility and was fully accountable for my actions. And I was also took that lemon of an incident and the lemon of my alcohol use disorder and started making lemonade out of it. Where I got into like, "Hey, let me go around to all the departments. Let me talk to everybody about what happened. Let me tell them my lessons learned." And then also, hey, let me become the drug and alcohol program advisor as a collateral duty because I'm really into this and I really want to help people. And so with that, they're like, I mean, it sounds silly, but I went from E6 to E5. And then when I made E5, you're like, this is the number one E5. I'm like, well, yeah, because I'm supposed to be an E6, but I'll take it.
Yeah, and I think that's important, right? Like, that you get out there and show you're not that person anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Had a great podcast with Craig Stanlin, who committed a felony and did prison time, or whatever, and he wrote a book
Mm-hmm.
called Blank Canvas, and it was really about starting all over. But I think like that's why I asked that question, because I wanted to hear, right? Like you went and demonstrated that you weren't that guy anymore. Like you were
Right.
actually a guy deserving of E6, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not you weren't being punished for who you were, but being rewarded for who you are and demonstrating that. And I think
Right.
that's
And
awesome. It's awesome to
I
know.
think, yeah, and that brings up another point is like, we talk about change and stuff like that. Like it has to be that deep, deep change where, like you said, you're not that guy anymore. Like I'm not the type of person that does X, Y, and Z anymore. So it's not just like, well, I want to lose 25 pounds and, here's how I'm going to do it. It becomes like, I'm the type of person that eats healthy and I'm the type of person that exercises, so this has to be like, I'm not that guy. I'm the type of guy now that doesn't drink and takes care of themselves and can be trusted and works, still works their tail off. So it's really a deep, deep change. Yeah. Comes from a deep level.
Yeah. No, and I think and I think that even aside from the external, people should know, like, you can stop punishing yourself too, right? If you made a mistake and you know it was a mistake and you're not that person anymore,
Right.
then stop punishing yourself, right? Like you're
Right.
not that person anymore. Like leave that behind, turn the page, and
Right.
and move
Yeah.
forward.
And it really, yeah, and a big indicator of like the change that's happened is that, I look back on that stuff now and I'm grateful for it. Like that was the best thing that happened to me. Like, that whole incident, that was at the time, it was like, it doesn't feel like it, as it's happening. But, in hindsight, it's like, that's the best thing that happened to me, man. Because it got me to where, it got me malleable. It got me teachable. It got me broken down to the point that I could be rebuilt. And yeah.
When you did the drug and alcohol program advisory
Hmm.
and sexual assault advocacy and all that stuff, like
Hmm.
were you counseling people or were you just speaking?
Not
Like
so much.
what was your role?
It was more like a case management type thing where
Hmm.
I was an advisor within the command, and a lot of times they make that a collateral duties where you have this job and then you also have your drug alcohol program advisor on the side. But the command that I came into was a command of about 750 people, and they had had such a rash of alcohol related incidents and stuff like that that they decided, hey, we're going to take this collateral duty and we're going to make it full time. We're going to have this one person that does it full time, and they look for volunteers, and I couldn't put my hand up fast enough. I'm like, hell yeah, I'll do that full time. So I came on board, and that's all I did was I basically did case management, and I did a little bit of screening, but not screening like not anything that's clinical. So I did screening as far as like admin screenings and got people to someone who did a clinical screening and got them a level of treatment, and then I monitored their aftercare program when they would come back from treatment, and I would have meetings with people once a week. And then I also, with that, I put together some self-help groups. I'd start a 12-step group, and I also started getting into a Buddhist recovery thing, and a smart recovery thing, which is self-management and recovery teaching, which is different than AA. It's more of a cognitive behavior therapy program.
Hmm.
And then Refuge Recovery, which is a Buddhist inspired program. So I took that stuff and I put together meetings for that, because we would be in like, Okinawa, Japan, and these folks wouldn't have transportation to get off base and go to any meetings or anything like that. So I yeah, I just founded some meetings in Japan for them, and I founded some meetings in California, and they took off. Some of them are still going today, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
That is cool. So what were the
Yeah.
traps that you saw people falling into, like during your time in that role? Like what are the traps that maybe might help people understand, like, hey, I'm in that trap, or look out for these traps? Like what were you seeing people kind of fall into?
I think, especially in the Navy, it was like a lot of folks were coming in and they were bringing in all the stuff that they had with them from home. They would bring that baggage along, and some of the traps like that I saw was like just not being able to. I think they call it like they couldn't sacrifice, who they were for what they would become. So
Yeah.
they joined the Navy to do good things with their life, but they brought all the garbage with them from home. And that was like, just that was my experience too. Is like I brought my problems with me, and but the traps that I see people fall into is, they fall in with the crowd of regular drinkers, and they try to like they're in denial of what's going on. They have a hard time coming to the realization that they're not like everyone else. And that
Yeah.
it's just that denial is it's thick, and it's easier to see from definitely the outside looking in, but it can be quite the veil for someone on the inside looking out. And they
Yeah.
just fall into regular partying patterns. But for them, we know it's different. That they don't go out and just have a couple drinks and go home and go to bed. They go out and turn it, tear it down and burn the city down every weekend. So, and then, yeah, just using it for, as a coping mechanism, like, and getting into these patterns where like, it's like having to have a drink at a certain time every day. And yeah.
And what's the typical success recovery path that kind of you see, these people come recover from?
Well, the people that I see that are successful in recovery are someone that they normally get down pretty low, and there's normally some type of incident where they get in trouble or something. As I've joked before, is like, an alcoholic's like a tea bag. They tend to work when they're in hot water. So, but and it's just that's the pattern. It's unfortunate is that like the people that seem to have gone lowest, are the ones that normally have success to come back out. It's the people that are kind of like getting in just a little bit of trouble and surface level here and there. They're the ones that just keep going back to it and going back to it. But a normal recovery pattern involves some type of clinical treatment, whether it be outpatient or inpatient. And then it's normally, most people follow it up with, a 12-step program. And not everyone's doing 12 steps, and that's okay. But something has to follow it up. There has to be some type of aftercare and some pretty massive lifestyle changes. I like to say, like, the only thing that needs to change is everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like you're saying like they felt enough pain to say, okay, I don't want to feel that again, and I
Right.
don't want to feel what worse than that feels like,
Right.
yeah. So back into the wellness stuff then. What
Yeah.
so how has that stuff supported you in kind of where you are today?
Yeah. So, I mean, so into the wellness thing, I got into meditation through a group called Mindfulness for Veterans, which I really need to go and try to track down the licensed clinical social worker who pushed a pamphlet across the desk one day to me and got me started on that journey, because she probably has no idea how much she has affected my life. But yeah, I was in couples counseling, and there were some indicators, I guess, to the counselor that I was suffering from some post-traumatic stress. And I remember she pushed a pamphlet across, and she was like, I think I want to check this thing out. And it was called Mindfulness for Veterans, and it was a free meditation group out in California. And I went and I jumped in with both feet, and I hadn't stopped since. And now I still have a daily meditation practice. And really, what that's done for me is it's literally changed my brain. I mean, it's literally has changed the structure of my brain. Um, Chronic stress, there's been studies that chronic stress tends to like shrink the prefrontal cortex and enlarge the amygdala, making me not be able to think as well, and also much more reactive and such. And what's amazing is that meditation has been shown, like even one meditation session, they can see changes in the brain, where it actually can thicken the cortical thickness of the prefrontal cortex. So my prefrontal cortex actually gets larger, and my amygdala tends to shrink. So I'm like much less reactive, and
Mm.
I can think much clearer. I can concentrate better. I am more empathetic and compassionate and more connected with people than I've ever been. I'm more comfortable in my skin than I've ever been. And all that from sitting still and concentrating on my breathing for 10 to 20 minutes every morning. It's pretty amazing payout.
Is,
So
is that it? Like, because I'm trying to learn more on the meditation side. And Elizabeth Gear, who was another podcast guest, came on, and we were talking about this. And I got to ask this question because I'm trying to get a good answer for it. Like, how does one meditate? Like, what?
mhm,
I know I'm trying. I'm not
yeah,
convinced I know what I'm doing yet. I know I'm doing it every day. Like,
yeah,
how would you recommend someone get started, or
yeah.
what are we doing?
What
How
are we
do we
doing here?
meditate?
So what I would suggest is there's probably 1,000 different apps out there. Is just download one. I mean, I'm not plugging it or being paid for or nothing, but I started with Headspace, and it just a guided meditation is best, rather than saying that, I'm going to do a silent meditation and unguided, and I'm just going to sit here. Because like when I was first introduced to meditation, it was like, I was introduced to a 12-step program. As part of the 12 steps is through prayer and meditation, they seek contact with a higher power. But it wasn't the best introduction, because I was like, well, what do I do? They're like, well, you just sit there. I was like, okay, well, just sit here. Yeah, just sit there and close your eyes and listen. And I'm just like, okay, man, like what I would close my eyes. And at the time, like, it was just like a hurricane inside my head. When I closed my eyes, I was like, oh, geez, that was not pleasant. But a
Yeah, yeah,
typical like mindful meditation, a concentration meditation would be, to close your eyes and, or shift your gaze downward and sit comfortably and sit upright, but not uptight, and then, I normally start with like 3 deep cleansing breaths, just to try to downregulate any of my sympathetic nervous system and get me back to at least a base of rest and digest. And then from there, it really is. It's like, it's so simple. It could drive you crazy. Is like, you choose a chosen object of awareness, normally the breath. So I just concentrate on my breath coming in, concentrate on my breath coming out, and then concentrate on my breath coming in, concentrate on my breath coming out. And any time that in my mind, if I can say, hey, my thoughts have drifted, and I started thinking about the podcast I did with Dale the other day, I'm like, all right, bring it back to concentrating on my breath coming in, my breath going out. And every time I'm able to recognize my mind has drifted and bring it back to my chosen object of awareness, like that's meditation. And I'm really doing well if I can do that and not beat myself up over my mind drifting. It doesn't want to sound like this, and my brain is like, I'm thinking about something else. Like, oh my God, you're not supposed to be thinking about this. You're supposed to be thinking about your breath. Gee, you're always thinking about other shit. You're not supposed to think about your breath. You know, God, something like that. It should be more like, oh, I'm thinking, or I'm fantasizing about the future, or I'm having memories of the past. Okay, bring it back to the breath. And that's a mindful meditation. Now there's many different forms of meditation. There's open awareness meditation where you just kind of like let it rip and let your thoughts drift. There's body scan meditations where I concentrate on like, starting maybe with my left foot and working my way up to my left ankle, and just, really, there's meta meditations, loving kindness meditations where you maybe say a mantra silently or out loud. There's all sorts of different types. As I would joke and say that, like, meditation's like a crescent wrench. It will fit any nut. There's a meditation out there for it. Yeah.
So, how would you recommend someone get started? So you mentioned try app like Headspace or something like that to do guided meditation.
Yeah.
Like in the mornings, what do you?
Mornings are normally best. So again, it's like any other habit, to establish something of say, hey, maybe you don't want to be so rigid with it, but you could say, at 6 a.m. every morning, I've set aside these 15 minutes to do a 5-minute meditation. And that's 5 minutes of me preparing myself to get ready to do it. And maybe 5 minutes of reflection afterward or something, just to carve out that time in your day. Mornings are normally best for folks to do it. Where to do it, find a quiet place, maybe in your house, or if you don't have a quiet place in your house, somewhere outside. But as long as it's somewhere comfortable and like free of distractions, meditation is not like, it doesn't have to be this suffer festival where you try to like, pretzel yourself into some full lotus position and gut through it. You should be comfortable and relaxed, and it's, consistency, is really important. It's better to do, a 5-minute meditation daily than it would be to like, hey, no, I don't do meditation throughout the week. I just do a 45-minute long sit, on Saturday. Yeah, consistency is key, I think, in it, and patience of if you, hey, I meditated. I meditated. Chris Norris told me to meditate, and I meditated, and I don't feel anything, man. What a ripoff. That'd be like, all right, well, you went to the gym and you did like one curl up, and then you're in the mirror, like, how come I don't have biceps yet? It's like, you got to keep going. Consistency is key, and you'll get there. So that was my experience. I started noticing the change, I'd say about 3 months in. I really.
And what was the change? Wow. Like, what's the benefit? Like, what?
The change was just that I was able to clearer thoughts, concentration, not as distracted, was able to monotask a lot better, just felt calmer overall. There's that I'll probably hammer it, but the Viktor Frankl quote of that basically between stimulus and response, there's a space, and within that space lies our growth and our freedom, I think is how it's said. Well, that space, it gave me that space. Like I didn't have that space. my stuff was like stimulus, reaction. Yeah. Now it was like stimulus, sit with it, chill, like what's going on, and then respond to it. With some wisdom. Rather than just just like a bull in a china shop going through life.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of what I needed to hear, around the patience aspect of it, and kind of what to focus on. Because I probably should. So I've been doing silent stuff. I've been going 30-minute silent meditation. I probably need to just go do some guided for a little bit and work my way up. But I was telling Elizabeth yesterday, I was like, I feel like I'm just getting worse at it. Like I felt like good at one point, and then now I feel like monkey mind, like it just like it's that hurricane you said, like that hurricane, man. And I get, because I'll put like white noise. I put my headphones on, I'll throw some white noise on, and I'll try to concentrate on my breath. But I don't know, probably just as so much I've been working on, like my brain's like, no, man, we can't be sitting here. We got to work, bro. Like, what are you doing? Like, no, man, get to work,
Yeah,
You,
totally natural, man. I think like the default mind is a storytelling mind,
yeah.
and it doesn't like it. Like it doesn't like no, like this is like really just concentrate on my breath. Like come on, you know. But
Well, and
it's
I
like
think the gym
don't we
thing
have
was
more
a
important things to do?
yeah, the gym thing was a
Yeah,
great analogy because I
yeah.
do recognize this is a workout for my brain and
Mm-hmm.
my ability to control it. And I have noticed, like, since I've been meditating, like, if I'm not being present, like, if I'm out on a
Mm-hmm.
walk with my wife or something like that, and I realize like she's talking, telling me about something, and I'm not paying attention, I'll do what you said. I'll go, hey, you're not here. Like, bring it back, and
Mm-hmm.
and I'll use like focus on my breath for a couple breaths to kind of do that, to kind of go, hey, you're over here, she's over there, she's talking to you, bring it back.
Yeah,
So I did
nice,
notice that I was getting something out of it just
nice.
recently, like I say, just slamming and bamming, with this Lions Guide stuff. I've been, meditation has been a fight, man. It's been a fight.
That's that's awesome, man. It's awesome to hear you're doing that, and I do the same. Like the breath is the anchor. The breath is the anchor back to the present moment, and the present moment is a place that I don't hang out in very much, and I need to. I need to hang out there a lot more because that's where I can really make any difference. That's where I can really get some things done. It's like it's my
Yeah.
brain
So,
wants to think about what's going to happen in 5 years or some shit that happened 5 years ago.
yeah, the other thing that I've been loving about your post on LinkedIn is kind of getting into some of the breath work. So
Yeah, yeah.
was meditation what got you into the breath work? And I picked up, yeah, I
Hmm.
recognize you're probably reading a couple books that I've read as well,
Yeah.
and following some stuff. So talk to me. What have you learned about breath work? What got you into that?
Yeah, I like breath work. I like because again, I take it from the military. It's, aspect of it is like I had like when I was running and gunning with Naval Special Warfare, we had things called like immediate action drills. So I like to have something in my pocket, like you talked about, like hey, bring it back and anchor on the breath. Well, I do like the same thing. If I get jazzed up and worked up, I know that there's breath work out there that can bring me back to calm down my sympathetic nervous system and bring me back from a fight or flight type of response to a rest and digest where I can think rationally. And some of that breath work is like Andrew Huberman talks about what's called a psychological sigh, which is a deep breath in and then a breath at the top and then a long extended out breath. And that long extended out breath is like that's the moneymaker right there. That's what activates the vagus nerves and starts to activate that parasympathetic nervous system. So I'll do those. I'll do breath work like 4-7-8 breath, which is 4 seconds in, hold for 7 seconds, long exhale out the mouth for 8 seconds, and again, that's just down regulating my my nervous system. And I'll use that to help me fall asleep too at night. I'll do 4-7-8 breaths. I'll do box breathing. I was first taught box breathing by Navy SEALs, which is 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds, 4 seconds out, hold for 4 seconds, 4 seconds in, so on and so forth. And it looks like a box, when you're
Mm-hmm.
going to the 4x4x4. I started doing a 1-2 ratio of breath, which is basically 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, and then increasing the out. So 4 seconds in to 6 seconds out to 4 seconds in to 8 seconds out. And that 8 seconds out is when I'll really start to, bring it down to start to power down the Death Star. So, but yeah, so that's some of the breath work I do. I know of Wim Hof, and I know a lot of people are into Wim Hof breath. I haven't gotten into that. I know, like, talked about our mutual friend JT. I think JT's getting into that hot and heavy. So, yeah, I'm just a big supporter of it. And it's like, man, it's just like so simple. It's like there's got to be more to it, really. We're just like working with our breath. It's like, yeah, that's it, man. It's a life changer. It's great, and it's great to have those things in my pocket. Because things pop up, man. I mean, just the other day, it's like I flipped open my MacBook here, and the whole screen looked like the snow on a TV, and I was like, like you want to stimulate your sympathetic nervous system, have that happen, and I was like automatically thrown into like, oh my god. So what do I do? I'll take a couple breaths before I do anything, so I can start to think rationally. You know we do it automatically. We don't even like think about it. It's like if something comes up and something's bothering somebody, you hear them like let out this message. you know,
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're doing it without, it's natural to do it, but then to do it with some intention and to do it proactively, like, hey, let's do this, let's hack into this system and be proactive about keeping ourselves, calm and cool and collected so that we can make rational decisions.
Yeah. Have you dove into much of Wim Hof's story and kind of how he got into breath work and all that stuff?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It comes
But
from,
he
comes from
says though, right?
tragedy, right?
Yeah, it came from tragedy, and he went and like his wife committed suicide. He goes and he
Mm-hmm.
jumps in the frozen lake,
Mm-hmm.
and it because like you said, naturally imagine you jump in, break the ice, jump in a frozen lake. What's going to happen? You're going to start huffing and puffing, and
Yeah. Yeah.
he like had this experience from that, and then went after it and turned it into a
Yeah.
lifelong passion of figuring
It's
that out.
amazing.
And
It's amazing.
so anyone who hasn't, man, go out. I think on YouTube you can find the Vice documentary. I think that it's pretty intriguing to kind of see what he's done with like his autonomous systems, his
Yeah.
immune system, his body heat, all of the
Yeah.
above. It's amazing, but it's a good testament. What I love about him, it's not like he's going like I'm David Copperfield and no one else is the greatest thing, do all this magic that I can do. He's like, nah, man, like, look, we can all do this,
Right.
check this out. How he took those college students, like when they tested his immune system control, like him controlling his immune system response, what they ejected him with E. coli or something like that, some sort of E. coli.
Yeah. 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 Something like
And
that.
99.99% of people like have major reactions to this. It's some sort of test they do to see how people are going to react to maybe some sort of cancer treatments or something. But anyways, he like none of it happens. Like 99% of
Mm-hmm.
people have like major reactions to it. He's like, no, watch this. Basically, hold my beer, watch this.
Right.
No, hold my breath, watch this. He gets ejected with it, and the worst he has is a mild headache. And all the
Mm-hmm.
scientists are all like, well, it's you're special, blah blah. And he goes, no,
Right.
I
Right.
can
Right.
give me some college student, give me some students, and I'll teach them how to do it. They're like, oh
Right.
well, how long do you need? Like a year? He's like, 6 weeks. And they come back
Yeah.
and they can all do it, and it's like, and
It's
that's what I
amazing.
like about his story and what he's doing. Because I think, look, we through technology and I'm talking the last, you know, uh, 200, 500 years of technology, we've really lost, I think, to your point, some of our more primal ways of solving
Mm.
for, these issues we have in wellness.
Yeah.
We've covered them up with technology, literally. Like when it comes to our ability to keep ourselves warm, we've covered it up, and our body is not going to waste energy doing things that it doesn't need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it can't keep itself warm anymore because we've got clothes to do that, or we can't heal. We don't heal ourselves anymore because we inject ourselves with medicines
Right.
and
Right.
medical technology.
Yeah.
But it can, like, there's a lot of stories out there about people who have used meditation
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
other things to heal, heal themselves.
Yeah.
And look, it's just interesting to explore.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
I'm very intrigued by that stuff. I really am.
it's funny is like I go to the doctor and they ask me all the time, like, what medications are you on? I'm like, none. They're like, you don't take any medication? I said, no, I meditate. I'm heavily meditated. So yeah, man. And they're like, so when back into the wellness stuff, it's like, yeah, I meditate is a big part of my thing, but also like exercise, I'm pretty dedicated to that. Nothing, not nothing extreme. I've kind of reeled it back, as I talked about before. It was like, I had an injury in 2019 that really set me back, and it made me reapproach how I was doing my exercise, because I was
What
doing
was
so.
that? What happened to you?
I had a L4 L5 herniation. I had a 9 millimeter bulging disc in my back that
Mm.
blew out when I was training for a 110-kilometer race in Japan, um, and it was pretty bad. I mean, it was really bad.
Mm.
I got like floppy foot syndrome from it and everything, and went to physical therapy and all that, and went to mental therapy from it too, because I was really leaning so hard on my running and my athletics that it was becoming, a problem. Where I was doing, like, I was putting too much of my self-worth, my validation into it, and like posting my results, and really, look at my race results and my distance and my speeds and my times and how much I climbed this week and blah, 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 and just really being a slave to it. And then my back blew out, and I went to physical therapy, but I also went to mental therapy, and it was it was pretty funny because I was like told the doctor and the therapist was like, I've heard that unresolved trauma can manifest itself in the body as physical injuries. So, yeah, I've been through some things and I'm here to talk about some things, but I'm really just here to get healthy because I got this 110-kilometer race coming up and I want to get healthy for it. And that's when it like started, that opened it up. And he was like, okay, well, running seems really important to you. So let's explore that. And yeah, so I've come back to exercise and running from that injury. Differently. I'm approaching it because I want to do it because it's healthy and it's fun. It's like I don't, I'm not a slave to it as I was. I'm still running 20, 25 miles a week, and sometimes I'll build up, like depending on what I got going on, I might build up to a 50, 60-mile week. If I'm going to do like I did a 31-mile run in August for Extortion 1-7. I do that every year. And I do it as a fundraiser now for the Honor Foundation. And then prior to that, my biggest run was I did a 100-miler. That was insane. I don't know if I'll ever do that again. That was like one of the most painful experiences of my life.
Is that right? Wow.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I knew it was going to hurt. I just didn't know it was going to hurt that much. It was not on the brochure. Like, it was incredible, but I'm glad I did it. It was a a testament to the human spirit. That like stronger than I ever thought we were. Kind of stuff like just keep pushing forward. It was at the end it was amazing. It was a really an amazing thing. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if I got another one in me. But yeah, so
Yeah.
there's that, and then also just like there's all 8 dimensions of wellness I practice: mental wellness, physical wellness, social wellness, financial wellness, intellectual wellness, environmental wellness. I'm into all of it, man. Just just trying to be my best self, and then also trying to help people along the way. Taking my life experiences and my academics and my passion for it, and just help who I can along the way. So
Yeah. It's awesome. And I mean, you feel, man, how do you feel now?
I feel great.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel, I don't know. I feel like I'm a man on a mission for sure with it. I want to spread the goodness and not be too pestering about it, but I'm trying to get folks on board with some of it. And I feel as though meditation and the wellness and all those practices will be like where jogging was in the 1960s or something when it first started coming around. Like people were like jogging, like you go out and run, and now it's like everyone has a gym membership just about, and folks are lacing up every day to go run marathons and so on and so forth. It's like
Yeah.
I think 20 years from now, it'll be the same thing. You'll be looking at meditation and wellness practices the same way. I think it's like the pandemic has shown us, that, if you didn't have any sense of trauma before the pandemic, I think everyone has it now. And I think it also showed many of us, myself included, like how fragile we were mentally, lock us in a house for 90 days at a time or something and watch me fall apart,
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think,
Yeah, there's a mental health gauntlet out there before us now, from
mhm,
social media, the pandemic currently, uh, you know, eh, yeah, we've got a mental health gauntlet that we're climbing through every single day. And,
mhm,
we just got to pick ourselves up. I'm with you. Like since kind of starting this journey with the Lions Guide stuff, I just want to be another soldier in a good fight, helping people pick their heads up from that.
mhm,
Go, hey man, you're that obstacle you're on right now. Number one, you don't even need to be on it. But number two,
mhm,
let's pick your head up. See, you're bigger than all that, and
mhm,
because that's what I see. I see people are like, so can't see the forest for the trees right now. And man, we
mhm.
just, very, you said it earlier, like it's not one thing, it's everything coming at us right now. Various different aspects that are, throwing these obstacles in our way that if we can pick our heads up and realize what we're capable of, and we can get over them and even get rid of them, and the more each one of us does it, there's
Right,
no one thing I've learned the last 18 months is like we've got to stop thinking there's one brushstroke that's going to solve everyone's problems and applies to
right,
everyone. Like everyone's got to turn inward and stop trying to solve the world's problems, before you can solve your own. Like,
Right.
it's,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. I got you, man. It's like be the change you want to see in the world, and find what works for you. And yeah, as you said, like everyone's capable. Like we're way more capable than we probably give ourselves credit for, and we just like, as Bob Marley said, that like you never know how strong you would be until like being strong is your only option.
yeah,
Like,
necessity.
yeah.
I mean, so I don't want to let you off the hook. I know we got about 5 months left, but I want to pay honor to your wife. Obviously, sounds like she bared with you in 2007. But how'd you meet your wife, and how long have you been
Oh
married at
yeah.
this point?
Yeah. So yeah, funny story. I met my wife through MySpace. And I know it's like, to me, it's always a crazy story is that I was on MySpace in like 2003, 2004 timeframe. And I was looking to travel to Thailand. And there was a travel blog in there. And we've had the argument back and forth of who messaged who first, but I think we settled it that she definitely messaged me first. And she was a young college student in Bangkok at the time, and I was a I was a raging alcoholic, so perfect fit, right? Uh,
Yeah.
but now, yeah, I traveled to Thailand, man. Took a chance, an adventure. Bought a ticket and went there for 30 days, and met my wife. And I was on my best behavior while we were there, and because she was super cute, super nice, and yeah, we traveled all over southern Thailand, and we stayed in contact, and went back a year later and asked her to marry me. And everyone thought I was crazy, just like they thought I was crazy when I was traveling to Thailand. And I wasn't too sure if I was sane, as well, but it all worked out, man. She came to America
That's
in
awesome.
2007. We got married, and here we are, still together 14 years later. And she's still super cute, super nice, super smart. And I'm no longer a raging alcoholic. So it's great.
Yeah.
It's all worked out.
Win-win.
Win-win situation. And we got 2 kids, and yeah, we're actually, so when we wrap this thing up, I'm in Washington State now, getting out of the Navy, and we're going to travel across the country, visiting friends along the way. And then I have family in New York, selling the truck in New York, and we're buying one-way tickets to Thailand. So
I love it.
by the time this podcast drops, I may be in Chiang Mai, Thailand. I going to school for social work, and I'm going to continue my wellness practices, and get probably some meditation teacher certifications along the way too. And yeah, come back around and try to help some people, man.
Well, if you come down 95 and pass through Maryland, you gotta let me know. It's
Absolutely.
grab some coffee. Maybe you can take me through a guided meditation so I can stop screwing it up.
I can definitely do that for you, man. No problem.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it. So, real quick, tell us what you're working on now and how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah. Well, what I'm working on now is so I'm working with our mutual friend JT, and working. He's just starting out with the nonprofit Consequence of Habit, which is a great podcast, and now he's taking it even further, and now a 503c nonprofit, and so I'm helping them with their meditation and mindfulness aspect to that program, and they're going to start having events, and they're going to start having speaking engagements, and it's exciting stuff. It's going to get bigger and bigger as it grows. So yeah, I'm helping with that, and then really just busy with transitioning out of the military, man. I mean, it's quite the adventure. That's enough, like in and of itself. But of course, I got that personality. I got to get into a whole bunch of stuff. But yeah, the best way to get a hold of me, and the easiest way, is through LinkedIn. If you found me on Facebook, you're just going to see probably pictures of what I had for breakfast or lunch. So definitely check me out on LinkedIn. That's more my professional networking place. And yeah, I'd love to connect with anybody, man. And if I can be any help, if you wanted to send me a message or something like that, or send me an email, if anyone wanted to discuss any of this stuff further, I'd be totally open to that. And you would have my be confidential as well. It's not like I'm gonna put your stuff out there if you're if you're questioning whether or not you might have an alcohol use disorder. Get a hold of me, man. Maybe we can troubleshoot it together.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and I appreciate that. So,
Yeah.
hey, man, I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story and tell us all your. Yeah, this has been great, a ton of fun, man. So, I love it. And it's a lot of value, and as always, going to serve a lot of people out there. So thanks for coming on, Chris.
All right, great. Thanks for having me, Dale.
All right.
Be well, everybody.
Yep, thank you.
Peace.